Your Excellency, President Tebboune, President of Algeria and Chair of APRM, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, representatives of Africa Peer Review Mechanism, the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, the United Nations Commission for Africa, ladies and gentlemen. The time has come to rewrite our history and reclaim our narrative and charge the African Renaissance forward. Esteemed colleagues, our urgent calling is to fulfill our duty to Africa's people and ensure that our continent takes its rightful place in shaping global progress in its full capacity and potential, both as a people and as countries. That is why we are gathered here today. Africa's economic potential is hamstrung by a financial system that misrepresents, distorts, and understates our reality. Global credit rating agencies have not only dealt a bad hand, they have also deliberately failed Africa. They rely on flawed models, distorted and outdated assumptions, and systemic bias, painting an unfair picture of our economies and leading to distorted ratings, exaggerated risks, and unjustifiably high borrowing costs. Let me say this again. Global credit rating agencies have let us down. They continue to rely on very flawed models and outdated assumptions. And the whole system is also biased. The result is that they paint a very unfair picture of our economies, and this has devastating effects because it leads to distorted ratings of what the situation really is. And it also leads to exaggerated risk of our countries and our continent, and obviously that leads to very high borrowing costs. These prejudice assessments come at an enormous cost to Africa. They deter investment, distort global trade, and derail progress towards sustainable development goals. By misjudging Africa, these agencies deny opportunities to investors and economies and deprive nations of prosperity. The numbers tell a damning story. The Africa Peer Review Mechanism and the United Nations Development Programme place the cost of biased credit rating at a staggering $75 billion in lost opportunities. In a continent abundant with natural wealth, vast arable land, billions in diaspora remittances, and the world's largest carbon sinks, credit rating agencies have delivered 94% of all downgrades in the past decade, while arbitrarily designating only 2 African nations as investment grade. We must be bold and call this for what it is: a financial straitjacket imposed on Africa. A system that punishes our economies while rewarding others, even when the fundamentals are comparable, in some cases even better. Excellencies, the foundations of global finance are supposed to be anchored on principles of fairness, transparency, and merit. Yet, these principles are disregarded when it applies to Africa. Africa will no longer accept to be misjudged by scales that overlook our reality. The winds of change are blowing, and our march forward is as unstoppable as it is relentless. An African credit rating agency is not just an alternative. It is, in my opinion, an imperative. This agency must be globally credible and backed by rigorous, credible data and driven by high reporting standards. But more importantly, it must reflect Africa's reality correctly. We will not walk this journey alone. We will build alliances east, west, and north, grounded in shared values of dignity, equity, and progress. We will hold rating agencies to account and demand accurate standards. We will leverage the experience and expertise of Pan-African credit rating, strengthening their capabilities and expanding their reach. The potential impact is profound. Research shows that a one-level improvement in Africa's average credit rating would unlock US $15 billion in additional funding. This alone would outstrip official development assistance and meet some of the critical aspects of Africa's infrastructure needs. The opportunity is within our grasp, and we must seize it. I want to emphasize that this agency will complement international credit rating agencies by filling in data and analytical gaps. In other words, it will do the heavy lifting that international rating agencies may lack the time, inclination, or capacity to undertake. I see the role of Africa credit rating agencies as one of demystifying and democratizing sovereign credit assessments. It must develop a methodology that is objective, transparent, and replicable, rooted in the rigor of science rather than the exclusivity of tradecraft. Let me commend the United Nations Development Programme and AfriCatalyst for stepping forward to support African nations in strengthening their credit worthiness. This is the kind of partnership that we need, rooted in action. I leave you with the words of African Development Bank President Akiwumi Adesina, and I quote, "The perception of risk is not the reality of risk. Wrong scales will always give wrong weights." End of quote. It is time for Africa to use the right scales, one that reflects its true weight. The African Credit Rating Agency will do just that. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, on your call for Africa to rewrite its history and end the very costly unfair rating system, which costs about $75 billion annually, as indicated in your speech.
It is also my honor to invite His Excellency Dr. William Samoei Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, to deliver his remarks.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, Your Excellency Antonio Guterres, Your Excellency Shabut, Your Excellency Musa Faki, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. The conflict in Sudan, now in the 22nd month, has devastated a nation that just 4 years ago was on a promising path towards stability and self-sufficiency. Tragically, Sudan's progress towards food security, once exemplified by record wheat harvests and sugarcane plantations, some of which I had the occasion to visit when I served as Minister for Agriculture. All that has been reversed, leaving over half the population of Sudan food insecure and millions at the brink of hunger. This crisis is worsened by the massive displacement of millions, with an estimated 11 million people forced to flee their homes. The collapse of healthcare systems, the spread of preventable diseases, and the deterioration of medical infrastructure have further deepened humanitarian emergency. The crisis' regional impact is equally severe as neighboring countries are struggling with overstretched social services due to the growing refugee crisis. This situation demands urgent regional and global intervention. Any discussion of the humanitarian crisis in Sudan must acknowledge that this is a man-made disaster. It is deeply regrettable that the dire humanitarian situation in Sudan stems from a political crisis that has escalated into prolonged and senseless armed conflict. The obstruction of humanitarian access by parties to the conflict is simply unacceptable. We call upon all involved to facilitate unrestricted access for humanitarian convoys and healthcare workers, and to allow the resumption of agricultural activity in areas under their control. Your Excellencies, our presence here today reaffirms our unwavering solidarity with the people of Sudan. It is incumbent upon all of us, member states and people of goodwill, alike to support ongoing efforts towards a peaceful resolution while addressing the urgent humanitarian needs of those affected by this conflict, especially women and children. Only through collective commitment and decisive action can we help restore stability and hope for a peaceful future in Sudan. Kenya continues to urge the warring parties to recognize that a military solution, if any, will not and has never brought sustainable peace. We encourage all Sudanese stakeholders to commit to a political resolution through genuine and inclusive dialogue. We continue in Kenya to provide a platform for different actors, political groups, civil society groups, to forge agreement, consensus on the way forward. And as a steadfast advocate for peace, Kenya, alongside IGAD, remains fully prepared to support and facilitate efforts towards a negotiated settlement. It is also imperative that we work together to alleviate the suffering of our Sudanese brothers and sisters. At the Humanitarian Pledging Conference for Sudan held in Paris in April 2024, Kenya pledged $1 million to support humanitarian efforts in Sudan. I am pleased to reaffirm that Kenya will fulfill this pledge with an additional $1 million to demonstrate our support for the Sudanese people. Finally, we urge all external actors supporting the warring parties to refrain from actions that further endanger the lives and future of the Sudanese people. As members of the African Union and the United Nations, we must uphold the fundamental principles of respect for territorial integrity, national sovereignty, and good neighborliness in our pursuit for lasting peace and stability in the Sudan. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your thoughtful remarks. Next, we are privileged to hear from His Excellency, Sheikh Shahbout bin Nahyan Al Nahyan. His commitment to humanitarian efforts has been unwavering, and we look forward to his valuable insights and contributions to this critical dialogue.